Half a day students. So today's lesson is a very easy one, but it is something that you are going to be using for the rest of your math careers, wherever it takes you, but it's a very important one that we're covering today. We're still working with polynomial equations, just in a different form. So the form that we have been working with is standard form, and this is when we have something that looks like 2x squared plus 3x minus 1 is equal to 0, right? We have, in this case, a quadratic function. It's in order from x squared to x to the number, and it is equal to 0. So that's our standard form. Now we're actually going to be looking at a new form, and that new form is a factored form. So this is the factored form is where it's written as the product of two or more linear factors. When I say linear factors, I mean that it only includes like x with no exponent. So we don't have any exponents of x in this one. So an example would be x plus 2 times x minus 1 is equal to 0. So this is still a polynomial. If I was to FOIL this out, I would get a trinomial, right? A quadratic equation. But right now it's in factored form. Another option or another example would be like x minus 3, x plus 2 times x minus 4 is equal to 0. So in this one we have three factors. It's still considered factored form. Notice that there are no exponents on my x's. So when you're given a polynomial in this way, it's actually so easy to solve, and we'll go over a few examples in the coming slides. What we are going to have to be familiar with is the zero product property. This states that if a times b is equal to 0, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. We know this is true because, for example, if I said 4x is equal to 0, there's only one number in the entire real numbers that we know that will ever give me that product, right? If one number is not 0, we have a 4. The only number that can make that product equal to 0 is 0. I would have to multiply by 0, right? So it had to be 4 times 0 is equal to 0. So in order for a times b to equal to 0, either this has to be 0 or this has to be 0. No other numbers are ever going to give you a product of 0 if one of them is not. So again, if ever you have a product, at least one of them has to equal to 0. So either a is 0 or b is 0. So looking now at some examples, for our first one we have x minus 2 times x plus 3 is equal to 0. So right now I have two factors. Again, I'm going to look at each of these as if they were like, this is a and this is my b. Again, the zero product property says that if a, b is equal to 0, then a is 0 or b is 0, right? So one of them has to be 0. So what I'm going to do, I have two values of x that can make this 0. I'm going to take each of these, equate them to 0, and then solve for x. So I'm going to say, okay, so either x minus 2 has to equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. From there, I'll solve each of these separately. X minus 2 is equal to 0. I'll add 2. Add 2 to each side. So x is equal to 2 or minus 3 minus 3. X is equal to negative 3. So I have two values for x. So if I was to plug either of these in, it would give me 0. Let's actually just show that right now. Let me choose a different color, which is blue over here. So if I had x is 2, I would have, if x is equal to 2, 2 minus 2 times 2 plus 3 is equal to 0. It should make this true. 2 minus 2 is 0, so I have 0 times 5 is equal to 0. Obviously, this is true because 0 is equal to 0, right? So since it makes one of them 0, that makes everything 0 already. So let's try plugging in negative 3. Negative 3 minus 2 times negative 3 plus 3 is equal to 0. This will make negative 5 times 0 equal to 0. That's true because 0 is equal to 0. For the rest of them, I won't be checking it. We're actually just going to take each of the factors, equate them to 0, and those will be our solutions. So for this one, I have A and B. This one I'm going to have an extra step in, but that's no problem at all. My first one, x minus 4 is equal to 0, or 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. Solve for x separately, add 4 to each side. You're left with x is equal to 4, or minus 1, 3x is equal to negative 1. I'll now divide by 3. So we have x is equal to negative 1 over 3. So we have, again, two values of x. There's actually two ways to solve this one. We can do it algebraically by isolating x, or we can do the product of factors. So looking at the first way, isolating x. So we always say the opposite of square is square root, right? So in order to eliminate this squared, I'm going to take the square root, but since I'm solving for it, I'm going to do plus or minus. So I'm going to take x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus square root of 0. The plus or minus doesn't matter in this point because square root of 0 is just 0, right? Positive 0, negative 0, doesn't matter. It's just 0. So I'm going to subtract 5 from each side, so I'm left with x is equal to negative 5. So usually we're left with, whenever we have x squared, or we're used to having two answers. But if it's something like this, x plus 5 squared is equal to 0, you actually only have one. It's a repeated factor. So if I was to actually do it the other way, if I make this a product of factors, x plus 5 times x plus 5 is equal to 0, because this is just x plus 5 squared, x plus 5 multiplied to itself, right? So from here, we have x minus 5, or x plus 5 is equal to 0, or x plus 5 is equal to 0. It's the same thing. This is going to be the same answer. X is equal to negative 5. It's repeated. We only have to say it once. Looking at now our last examples, we now have something that's a product of 3 factors. So I'll probably have 3 different answers. So from here, I'm just going to do the same thing that we did last time, make each of them equal to 0. So the first one, I'll do 2x plus 1 equals 0, or 3x minus 2 is equal to 0, or x minus 1 is equal to 0. Solving each of them, this first one I'll do minus 1, 2x is equal to negative 1, divide by 2, so x is equal to negative 1/2, that's one answer. Next one, add 2 to each side, 3x is equal to 2, I'll divide both sides by 3, so x is equal to 2 over 3. Now I have just to add 1 to each side, x is equal to 1. So this is basically it for this entire section, just how to solve factored polynomials. Again, this is very easy, but it is very important for the next section that we're going to go over. You can try just pressing pause right now and then trying this last one on your own. You should be able to do it very easily, and then you can press play and see if you did it the same way. So making each of them equal to 0. And again, this only works when it's equal to 0, okay? If it's equal to another number, you can't say, oh, okay, 3x minus 2 is equal to 4. 4x plus 3 is equal to 4. X plus 4 is equal to 4. It only works with 0. Okay, add 2. So x is equal to 2 over 3. Minus 3, minus 3. My neighbor's dog is barking. I'm sorry. Divide everything by 4. X is equal to negative 3 over 4. This last one, I'm going to subtract 4 from each side. X is equal to negative 4. So the next few lessons are actually going to be really big ones. We're finishing up Algebra 1 right now. So good job to all of you, and please just try to finish strong because these are ones that actually are very important for your coming math courses. But keep up the good work. Hopefully this is easy for you. The next couple ones, they are going to take some practice, definitely, but I do think that they'll be easy for a lot of you.